Mom is not bad. I love her so much. I don't like you, Dad. You say mean things to her. In front of my 4-year-old son Toby, my husband and Mill spoke ill of me. I regretted hesitating to divorce, seeing Toby deeply hurt by their words. This is not the time to be worrying about whether or not it's okay to make Toby separated from his father. A father who makes his son cry isn't needed. Holding Toby close, I decided to execute the plan. I'm Millie. I earn an income through game streaming. My husband, Erwin, is a corporate employee. We were getting along well before our marriage, but things haven't been going well since our son, Toby, was born. It was when Toby was just a year old. Erwin became even more engrossed in his work after the birth of Toby. He was always talented at his job, so he quickly climbed the corporate ladder. As a wife, it was heartening to see him getting recognized at work. But Erwin didn't have the knack for balancing both work and home life. It was before marriage. I was working as a temporary worker. I had a dream and chose to chase it by working as a temporary worker instead of taking a full-time position. That's when I met Erwin. Seeing him work diligently, he looked so impressive. I was over the moon when Erwin first asked me out for dinner. After dating for 2 years, Erwin and I got married, and soon after, Toby was born. Erwin once mentioned, "There's no future in being a temporary worker. Maybe you can work part-time when Toby gets older." I agreed. So, I quit my job as a temporary worker. Looking back, it might have been a wrong choice. Had I continued with a more conventional job, maybe Erwin and I would still be together. Erwin turned cold the moment I became a full-time housewife. He was always swamped with work, hardly coming home, and expected me, who wasn't working, to do all of the household chores. When Toby was still a baby, I managed to do the household chores. But as he turned 1 and started walking, I couldn't take my eyes off him. Whenever Toby would sleep, I'd rush through the household chores. By the time I was done, I was exhausted. Toby was a light sleeper, and I'd often fall asleep with him while trying to put him to bed. Then, Erwin, returning late, would shake me awake. "Hey, why aren't the household chores done? At least have dinner ready for me when I get back." Half asleep, he'd pull me out of the bedroom to prepare dinner. The meal was ready, it just needed reheating. But Erwin wouldn't have it. According to him, a good wife should stay awake until her husband returns and have dinner ready. And while the husband eats, she should choose her husband's clothes to wear for tomorrow. When Toby started crying at night, Erwin would give me impossible demands, saying, "You're his mother, discipline him so he doesn't cry at night." If it were that simple, no mother would have a hard time. Erwin had hardly ever interacted with Toby. He didn't even know basic child-rearing knowledge. For Erwin, raising Toby meant climbing the corporate ladder to ensure Toby never faces financial problems. I tried discussing with Erwin countless times, hoping he'd spend more time with Toby. But all he did was vent his frustrations at me. "You keep complaining even though you can't even manage the household chores. Aren't you ashamed?" he'd mock. I eventually gave up expecting any help from Erwin with raising Toby. Every time the thought of divorce crossed my mind, I'd second guess, thinking, "But Toby is still so young, is it right to make him separated from his father?" My feelings for Erwin hadn't completely faded, so I couldn't make up my mind. It was when Toby turned 3 and started going to preschool. I started to chase my dream once again. It might not be understood by everyone, but my dream was to become a game streamer. Before getting married, I used to work as a temporary worker while streaming games at night, gaining some recognition. While Toby was at preschool, I started recording my game streaming videos. Recently, the game streaming industry has been buzzing, so using the savings from before the marriage, I bought equipments. I made a comeback to the online world. The icon was made by a now famous illustrator I met before my marriage. When I started streaming games, my fanbase began to grow rapidly. There were also people who remembered me from before, and my YouTube channel grew exponentially. Erwin doesn't play games. Ever since we were dating, he would give me a displeased look when he saw me playing games. I hadn't explicitly said I wanted to make a living from game streaming, but I did tell him that I was making game streaming videos before we got married. Erwin used to say, "Well, if it's just a hobby, do what you want," but eventually it went beyond just a hobby. That's because my YouTube channel started to make money. Subscribers kept increasing, and I soon made a decent amount of money. Beyond it being just a hobby, and with Toby starting kindergarten, Erwin began making snarky comments like, "Why don't you start a part-time job? You can't even do household chores properly." To make him not say those comments anymore, I decided to tell Erwin about my success in game streaming. After Toby went to bed, as usual, Erwin came home late, and while he was eating, I explained about my activities on YouTube and the income I was gaining. Throughout, Erwin had a very skeptical expression. "So, you're saying your job is just playing games? Do you think I can accept that? People get paid because they contribute to society. You're not contributing to society by playing games. I think I'm contributing to society by providing entertainment. What do you mean by that? It's not like you're a celebrity." Erwin snorted in amusement and finished eating. "Instead of spewing nonsense, go find a part-time job. I bet you're just playing games all day at home." I expected him not to fully understand me, but this was beyond what I expected. What's more, my in-laws came to visit us. They used to come to our house a few times a year. It was great they come to see Toby, but they're quite a handful. Being the source of Erwin's old-fashioned beliefs, they are quite stubborn. Every dish I cook never seemed to be the same as what my Mill cooks, and my Phil always complained. My Mill has been a housewife for years and is an expert in household chores. She would find any small imperfection in my household chores and complain. Honestly, every time my in-laws visited us, I got emotionally exhausted. This time was no exception. Toby, who was only 4, happily greeted them, while I struggled to keep a smile on my face. Watching Toby play with his toy by himself, I was making small talk with Erwin and my in-laws. Suddenly, Erwin said, "Oh, speaking of which, let me tell you something." He started telling them, in a rather exasperated tone, that I earn money on YouTube. They didn't seem to understand the concept of game streaming, assuming I was just playing games all day. They both started criticizing me. "What's this about making money from playing games? Stop lying. You just want to play games at home, don't you? Erwin works so hard every day, and you're just playing games at home. What's wrong with you?" "No, I'm not just playing. I do earn an income from playing games." No matter how much I explained, Erwin and my in-laws just didn't get it. No matter what I said, they criticized me for just playing games and told me they felt sorry for Toby. But suddenly, Toby started speaking. "Mom is a YouTuber. She's cool. Toby grew up with the internet. He understood the concept of a YouTuber. Once, while I was editing my video, he asked, 'Mom, are you playing?' I had explained to him about my job. The only person in this house who understood my job was the 4-year-old Toby. However, at Toby's remarks, my in-laws exclaimed, 'Poor boy. He's been brainwashed by his mother.' Poor Toby. Toby, your mom ain't all that. She is just an good adult who's always playing games." I was taken aback by the in-laws' comments and couldn't find words when Erwin jumped in with a zinger. "Toby, you bet not to be like your mom." Toby looked deep and fought for a moment, then left the living room as if running away. As I stood up from my chair, my Mill said, "Don't bother. You'll only make things worse." Ignoring her, I chased after Toby. In his room, hugging his knees, Toby was crying. "I'm sorry. It's all my fault," I said, and Toby sniffled, taking my hand. "I don't think you're bad at all, Mom. I love you. I don't like Dad because he's always mean to you." Tears welled up in Toby's eyes, and my heart ached hearing his words. I had been thinking not to get a divorce for Toby's sake, but what was the point of being with a husband who made his son cry? Determined, I told Toby we were going for a walk, and left the house. We really did go for a walk. After playing at a park, I headed for the town hall. I received the divorce papers and went home with Toby. While Toby was playing in his room, I presented the divorce papers to the table where my in-laws and Erwin were chatting. "What's this?" Erwin smirked, looking at the papers with disdain. "You want a divorce? How are you going to survive without my income? All that talk about being a successful YouTuber or whatever, that's just a lie, isn't it? Well, Erwin, just sign it. Keep them on hand, and if Millie becomes a nuisance, you can submit it anytime." Well, she's kind of a nuisance already, though. Erwin and Mimil cracked up by my FIL's comments. Erwin went on to sign the papers. I knew he would. After all these years, I kind of knew how Erwin would react. My in-laws probably hoped I'd be out of the picture. So, I expected that they would probably egg Erwin on to sign the divorce papers. Everything went according to plan, so I took care of some household chores, video editing, and then something else before heading to bed. My in-laws, who stayed the night, were loudly complaining about me until late, but it was none of my business anymore. The next morning, when I woke up, having slept beside Toby, Erwin and my in-laws were having a breakfast in Hawaiian shirts. Wondering about what was going on, Erwin, flaunting sunglasses on his head, told me, "We're going to Hawaii as a family vacation. You, who aren't family anymore, stay at home alone. Don't play games because Erwin is not at home. Do the household chores. Too much gaming damages your brain." Erwin's comment about me not being family was probably because I had him sign the divorce papers. Thinking he was such a fool, I told the overly cheerful Erwin and my in-laws, "Right, I'm not part of the family anymore, so you all enjoy your trip." Erwin and my in-laws looked puzzled, so I decided to let them in on the truth. "Erwin and I are already divorced." "What do you mean?" Erwin, looking flustered, asked, and I showed him a copy of the divorce papers. "This is a copy. I submitted the real one last night." "What? So that's why you were bustling about last night." "I went to submit the divorce papers. Didn't expect you folks to be planning such a vacation, though. But Toby and I are leaving this house anyway, so it's a good timing." My in-laws looked surprised. Erwin seemed to be struggling to grasp the situation. The three of them looked so alike in their shock that I couldn't help but laugh. "We'll discuss property division through a lawyer." "All right. Hiring a lawyer isn't free. Don't be so naive." "The naive one is you. Being a YouTuber is a legit profession. I'll tell you what, I earn more than you now." Erwin, clearly not believing me, said, "What the hell are you talking about?" Then, he placed his hands on Toby's shoulders. "Toby, let's go on a trip with us. You don't need your mom anymore." Considering Erwin never really took care of Toby, his desire for custody was probably all for show. If word got out that he'd been divorced and lost custody, it'd damage the squeaky clean image he tries to maintain at his workplace. But Toby, with innocent eyes, looked at Erwin and said, "No. I don't like Dad, Grandpa and Grandma. They're mean to Mom." Toby had always been by my side, witnessing the things I'd been told by Erwin and my in-laws. They might have thought he was too young to understand, but Toby understood well. Ignoring the desperate look on Erwin's face, I began preparing to leave with Toby. I picked up our packed bags and waved cheerfully to Erwin and my in-laws. "Enjoy your trip." "Bye, Dad." I had told Toby the previous night that we'd be saying goodbye to Erwin. We'd be moving to my parents' house, so Toby would have to switch preschools. Still, Toby gripped my hand tightly and told me, "I want to be with Mom." Throughout our journey back to my parents' house, Erwin kept trying to reach out to me, but I ignored him. When we arrived at my parents' house, my parents, already informed about the situation, warmly greeted us. I'd shipped my streaming equipments the previous night, so I planned to continue my broadcasts from my parents' house. With Toby settled into his new preschool and me adjusted to streaming from my parents' house, I received a message from Erwin. After a period of no contact, he asked me to help him. It turned out that he didn't even know how much he earns. He'd always just tossed his paycheck at me and left me in charge of all finances. Consequently, he was now realizing his income was far less than he'd imagined. Feeling lonely, Erwin had blown a lot of money at bars. He'd overestimated his earnings. He finally realized he wasn't the high earner he'd thought when he reached his credit card limit. He'd asked his parents for money, but they didn't help him out. Now he was saying he might not be able to afford the alimony and child support I demanded through my lawyer. My reply was set. "Please communicate through my lawyer. We're no longer family." With that, I headed out to pick up Toby from preschool. No matter what happened to Erwin or how his parents felt, that are none of my business, because they are no longer my family.